My name is Nathaniel Dodson, and in today's Photoshop tutorial, we're going to create this bridge through Polaroid falling out of or into focus effect. It's directly inspired by the Instagram feed of Marco Zagara right about a year ago from the time I'm recording this. He created an image just about exactly identical to this. Somebody sent it to me. I thought it was cool, and here we are today, ready to create this pretty cool photo manipulation effect in Photoshop. Let's get in there and get started right now. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. I should say, use the link down in the bio. Check out Marco's Instagram feed. He's got some awesome photo manipulation stuff over there. If you like that kind of thing, you're going to love what he's got going on. All right, we've got the image here of our bridge and what's going on. What I want to do is select the background and hit Command or Control J to duplicate this. We're going to name this new layer Blurred. And I'm going to right-click on that layer in the Layers panel and choose to convert it to a smart object. Now, with this smart object, I'm going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to apply, there we go, a 35-pixel Gaussian blur to this image. Hit OK. And next we need to bring in our Polaroid. So I actually have that image. It's a stock photo here in my Adobe library. So I'm going to open that up. You can find these. You can purchase a stock photo or Adobe stock. I got this one from. You can just run a Google search for hand holding a Polaroid and you'll find something pretty similar. I'm just going to do a very rough selection of this. It does not at all need to be exact. So I'm going to grab my lasso here. You can choose to go with the perfectly sharp edge. I might feather this selection by just 1 pixel and then just kind of roughly go along the edge of the Polaroid. You can see it's not even perfectly straight. That's totally fine. I'm going to bring it down past the edge of the Polaroid here. So something like that and something like that. Bring this around. There we have it. Just wrapping right around the edges. It's all straightforward. If you know how to use the lasso tool, you know what's going on here. And then commit that. So we have the selection of the Polaroid. We also, however, want to get the hand here. So I'm going to use the quick selection tool, this guy right here. I'm going to hold down Shift, and that's going to allow me to click and drag and add to the selection. So I'm going to add the fingers and just go over it. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to get as much of it as we can, and we're going to tweak and adjust this either with the lasso tool, or you could go in and paint a mask. Because this can kind of be a rough selection, I'm going to go back to the lasso tool. Again, I'm just going to feather with 1 pixel, and I'm going to hold down Shift and just drag along like this fingernail here. I don't even know if it's going to be in the image. I'm just being a little bit of a perfectionist here. Maybe my OCD kicking in a little bit, but you know what? That's all right. Good artists maybe have a little OCD happening there. And now we've got this big chunk of gray here and the chunk of gray here in the middle. So in order to attack this, we could use the lasso. I have a feeling if I take the quick selection tool and hold down Alt or Option and just try to paint some of it away. Yeah, look at that. That's going to give us a nice selection and much faster. And maybe the same thing in here. If I hold down Alt or Option, I'll just select that bit of gray on the inside. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. If we see that it's appearing in the image when we move it over to our photo manipulation, we'll just unmask it a little bit because we're going to be creating a mask here shortly. See this little bit of stuff here? I'm going to hold down Shift with my lasso tool, make sure I just have that. And over here, maybe just hold down Alt or Option and just get rid of that little corner. All right, now I'll zoom out and we have a selection, a rough selection around the hand and the Polaroid. We can just hit this little button here to add a layer mask. Voila, knock away all the rest of the stuff. All right, now we just drag our Polaroid hand up here to our other image, drag it into the image and let it go. And here we go. Now, how do we get this in place? Well, we go Edit and we choose Free Transform. And it's pretty simple. We right-click and choose to flip it vertical. There we have it. And maybe I want the hand coming in from the other corner, so I'll right-click and choose to flip it horizontal. There we go. Now the key is, with this position, and I can see there's like a little bit of gray left there. We might want to clean up some of that stuff. Let's commit the change. We could, of course, make this larger, smaller, whatever you like. The one thing that I want to be careful of, I'm going to shut off the blurred layer here for a second. I kind of don't want my Polaroid, like these bottom edges of it, these corners, I really don't want them to touch the rope bridge, because if they do, it's just going to kind of make things a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to keep it up, kind of off of that a little bit. Maybe I'll hit Command or Control T. Again, that's the same as going Free Transform, so Command or Control T. Maybe I'll rotate this a little bit just because it looks like the bridge is a little rotated, just so I can get it down really as low as possible. Something like that might be cool, and I'll probably live with that right there. Now we can see Most of the gray and the troublesome areas of the hand, they're not even in our composition, totally hidden and looking great. Okay, so we need to get rid of the center black area of the mask. We can do this pretty easily. We can just use something like the magic wand tool, just select it, and then we would want to select our mask. So we had just selected the layer, see the little white tick marks? We want to select the mask and just fill this with black. So we would go Edit, Fill, and choose black. If you know the hotkeys for filling with your foreground and background colors, that's cool too. That works even better and faster, in fact. There we go. We filled that, and that looks great. One thing, actually, maybe I'll go Select, Modify. I just undid a couple times, Command or Control Z. Let's expand this selection by like 2 pixels just to make sure we get rid of all the little black areas, and then go Edit, Fill, and just choose to fill it with black, and Command or Control D to deselect, and now we have the center of our Polaroid. Now, this just kind of looks randomly awkward and weird because we need to build out our depth and how the depth of field is going to work with this. So the first things first, we're going to use our polygonal lasso tool and create a selection that follows along the white area of the Polaroid. It doesn't have to follow the edge of the white. It just the edge of the selection has to sort of be hidden underneath, if you will, that part of the Polaroid. Now we're going to select the blurred layer. So I've got the blurred layer selected, and we're going to create a mask that hides that center area. So we can just go Layer, Layer Mask, Hide Selection. So it's going to create a mask and just fill that area with black. So all right, now it's hiding the blurred layer. So what do we see? Well, we see the sharp layer underneath. But this isn't good enough. We want to see the bridge in focus as well. So this is where we kind of take matters into our own hands. We can maybe feather our polygonal lasso tool a little bit more, maybe give it like an 8-pixel feather, and we can go down along the rope bridge like this and kind of see what this would look like. We can go through here and just do this sort of thing. So we're riding along the edge of the rope and come down and around, just so we're sort of grabbing the entire bridge, and we're going to fill this with white. White is my foreground color, so I can use the hotkey Option Delete. That's Alt Backspace on the PC. I'm sorry, I don't want it to be white. I want to flip my foreground and background color, of course, because we want to hide the blurred layer. So I want to fill it with black, so make black your foreground color, Option Delete, or Alt Backspace. Make sure you have that selected. What's happening here is it still has the feather option selected that I tweaked and adjusted. So I just want to click away from that. I'm going to hit Escape. There we go. And now we can go ahead, Option Delete or Alt Backspace to finally fill that selection with black. Now that looks a little harsh still. So what I usually end up doing with something like this is you just take the brush tool. If you have a tablet, great. If not, don't worry. Make sure my brush is set to 100% opacity. And I just want a big soft-edged brush. Maybe I'll right-click 800, maybe a little bit too big. Something like 300, very soft edge. And just paint with black along the edge of the bridge. And you can be as fine about this or as just kind of rough and tumbly about it. Just get in there and get it done as you want. Whatever you think your particular image dictates, just go ahead and do that. If you want a bigger sort of fading from the blurriness to the sharpness of the bridge, go ahead and space it out a little bit more. Also, part of it is just going to depend on the exact image you chose to create this effect. One thing I think would be cool to do here is just all of this is suddenly in focus. Let's sort of blend it together a little bit. So I'm going to make my brush a bit bigger by hitting the square bracket keys. I'm going to paint with white because we're going to paint back some of the blurred areas. So we're painting with white on the mask. And I'm going to reduce the opacity of my brush to like 30–40%. And I'm just going to paint over at least the back area of the bridge, something like this, and just bring back some of that blurriness, especially around the edges where we can kind of help fade that stuff together. It definitely looks like a digital blur. It doesn't look like the kind of bokeh blur you would get with a proper camera creating this effect, but I just think it helps kind of tie the scene together a little bit, and it's an effect that I'm willing to live with right now, as much as I don't really like that soft Vaseline-y focus effect. That's what we got here, and I'm kind of okay with it. All right, so next up, we want to go in and paint away the white frame that's covering our dude's body here. So we want to come back into the mask for the Polaroid, right? So we're going to select that mask, and I'm just going to grab the brush tool, and we're just going to do this by hand. It's pretty straightforward and easy. So just a decent sized brush. Make sure you're painting with your foreground color set to black. We want to hide this, and also, by the way, push your opacity back up to 100%. We want to just hide this white frame, and I do kind of want it to fade toward the edges of the jacket, right? So we want to have that nice soft fade, and we're going to blend that together a little bit as well in just a second. But you can see what we've got there, not looking too bad. Now we do want to apply a shadow to that to make it look like it's sort of folding around our model. So we're going to create a new layer, and I'm going to name it Shadow. Let's go shadow. And then we're going to hold down our Alt or Option key and hover between the shadow layer and layer 1, which is really the Polaroid layer. And we're going to go back to the shadow now, grab our brush tool. We're going to make the brush really big. And we're just going to paint with black maybe a couple times in here to just build up that shadow. You could go black. Actually, probably something that'd be a good idea is get a really, really deep green from the background, just so you're really carrying those green tones through the image. So you can see it's almost like pressing into the Polaroid. If you need, of course, you can reduce the opacity of that shadow as well, just to blend it in a little bit more. All right, the next thing we want to do is darken up the hand because it's just way too bright and it's just appearing there and we really don't want to see it that much. So create a new layer and we're going to name this Burn. And once more, hold down Alt or Option and clip it to the stack. It's going to clip it ultimately to the Polaroid layer. We're going to zoom in on this hand and a lot of different ways we could darken this. I'm just going to go with the simple burn. So we're going to go Edit, Fill, and we're going to fill this with 50% gray. Hit OK. And now we're going to set this to the blend mode of overlay, which is going to make the gray disappear. And then we're going to grab our burn tool. I've got the exposure set to 50 and targeting shadows. And we're just going to darken up the hand and just keep clicking on it until it just appears dark enough that we don't think it'll be as noticeable. And I know what you're thinking. This looks like a smoked sausage now. It's just so golden brown and rich and looking awful. And you're right. It is pretty bad and it's just too saturated. So we'll go ahead and add a vibrance adjustment layer and also clip that to the stack and just reduce the vibrance to like, I don't know, -75 probably. There we go. So before the burn and the vibrance adjustment, it was a very light hand. And now we're just darkening it, helping it to blend in a little bit more. And I just think it looks better. All right, and the last thing we'll do before we do just the final toning and adding a color treatment to this is merge all layers to a new layer, Command-Shift-Option-E. That's Control-Shift-Alt-E on the PC. And then we're going to desaturate it, Command-Shift-U. That's Control-Shift-U for the PC, folks. And then we're going to go Filter, Other, High Pass. And I'm probably going to apply a pretty big high pass to this, something like 10 or 15. Maybe I'll try 10. 15 is usually pretty good, though. We'll just go 10, and I'm going to set this to the soft light blend mode, and then we're just going to tone this effect back to 50, 60%, something like that. Is pretty decent. So I think that looks good. I like that. I like where that's headed. All right, so now for the color grading, we're going to burn through this kind of quickly. Let's go ahead and add a color balance adjustment first. We're not turning on preserve luminosity, so just that will make a difference. So we're going to add some cyan to this, maybe around -45, and then I'm also going to add some blue to this, probably like +35-ish. Let's go ahead to the shadows here. And again, I'm going to flood the shadows with cyan and also with blue. So I'm going to push this up to like +80, 85. Really, really blue. I know it's not looking all that great, but just hang with me. We're going to push just a little bit of yellow into the highlights and something like that. We'll leave that kind of where it is. We could adjust it as well in terms of reducing opacity or anything like that. Let's go ahead and add a curves adjustment layer as well. And I want to flatten out the dark area. So I'm going to boost the shadows straight up and I'm going to pull the shadows, I pulled the black straight up and I'm going to pull the shadows back down and maybe just keep the contrast in the whites by lifting up the lighter areas of the image. So we can just see a quick before and after. We're just kind of flattening out the shadowy areas of the image a little bit. We can reduce the opacity of that layer as well if you think it's just a little too strong. Subtlety is a good thing. Of course, I say that after blowing the blue of this image completely out of the water. Let's go ahead and add a color lookup table, which is this adjustment layer. We're going to load a 3D LUT, and that is going to be the horror blue. There we have it, something like that. And maybe we can reduce the opacity of this a little bit, push it down to around 75%. And then last but not least, maybe we'll go with an old selective colors and we'll choose the blacks from the color dropdown and just reduce the yellows in the blackest parts of this image. And at this point, I'll go back to color balance and I'll say, all right, color balance, you're definitely too strong here. Let's push you back to around 50%, something like that. And there we have our final color adjustment. So we begin with an image like that. We wrap up with an image like that, walking into the sharpened area across the bridge in the land of blurriness. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you create this photo manipulation. Well, that's it for this one, folks. 2 quick things. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe and please turn notifications on. That'd be cool. Number 2, if you made this effect or something similar, I'd love it if you'd tag me in Instagram. Upload yours to Instagram and tag me. My handle is @tutvid. It'd be cool to see what you make. And if you enjoyed this video, check out another photo manipulation tutorial that I have. It's making a guy jumping through a glowing portal on the streets of Tokyo. It's a really cool tutorial. I think you'll enjoy it. And just a quick reminder that I love all the people, but especially I love people like you who stick around and watch these videos all the way till the end. Get it, got it, good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one.